Hey YouTube, yesterday I did a top 3 cards that should come off the ban list, but today I'm going to do the opposite of that. I'm going to do top 3 cards that should stay on the ban list forever. Now, actually I'm doing 4 cards because there's a tie between 2 cards that I think should stay on there forever. I have a list of 4 cards here that I thought should never come off the ban list. Yada isn't part of my list because it's kind of a given. If you don't think that Yada should stay on the ban list, then you're crazy. There's no format where he's ever okay. He's an instant OTK. And that's kind of like the theme of today's show, where the cards usually lead into some kind of an OTK or are just kind of like that powerful. So the first card on my list is going to be Magician of Faith. And I know I'm going to hear from Galactic God about this because he loves that card. But I think Magician of Faith is an enabler of certain things. And I keep getting told that traps are more powerful now, traps are really good, but traps take one turn to be able to activate. And so you're waiting around for an opportunity when spells, you can activate them that turn. And unless you just set like an MFC or Book of Moon or something, then you really don't have to ever wait to activate spells. Now, what Magician of Faith does is when you flip her face up, you can go back into your graveyard, select a spell, take it out of your graveyard and add it to your hand. And this is a very powerful mechanic, and the reason she's on the ban list. You know, if traps were so powerful and if traps were this big dangerous thing, then Mask of Darkness would be on the ban list. But because it takes so long for traps to become really viable, then there's really no reason for them to be seen as a super broken powerful thing. And all the traps that are super powerful are probably already on the ban list. So let me make a scenario for you. You just played Monster Reborn on a Stratos, or your Summoner Monk, or some kind of a Synchro or an Exceed monster you had brought out prior that was already destroyed, and then you flip your Magician of Faith up, and you take back that Monster Reborn. Now you can go in your opponent's graveyard and take something of theirs, or you can go back in your graveyard and take another monster out again, basically swarming the field because of one card. Another scenario is that you just got heavied by your opponent, then you hit their face down monster. It's Magician of Faith. They go back and take their heavy again. And this is going to scare you into not setting anything, or setting one thing at a time or whatever. So you set one thing and they mystical it. Now you're fairly screwed because they have such an established field and they have their heavy. You know they have their heavy. You know that they're going to be able to bring out monsters without worry of getting hit by anything because they could just heavy it. So it just creates too many situations that are too powerful. There's always going to be powerful spell cards. She can basically be teched into any deck because every deck has a powerful spell card for archetypes or that are, a staple. So that's my number 1 pick. My number 2 pick is Cyberstein. Now, the reason I picked Cyberstein second is because he kind of has a hefty cost, but yeah, he promotes OTKs. That's basically all he does, is he makes OTKs. And it's not as easy to get him out as it was before. You don't have Last Will anymore. If they brought him off the ban list, if they ever brought him off the ban list for whatever crazy reason, he would be limited to 1, so you'd have to be able to search him out somehow. He isn't a fiend, he's a machine, so you can't bring him out with Tour Guide, and even if you did, his effect would be negated. You'd have to be able to dump him to the graveyard somehow, reborn him, or Gold Sark him out. So he isn't super much, crazy threat anymore like he was before, but if that situation ever comes, he can still basically kill you in 1 turn. So he is an OTK. And the third tie cards are Ring of Destruction and Yugioh Guardian. And the reason I picked these two was because Yugioh Guardian is really easy to get out. He's an example of very bad design. I should have actually talked about him in my design episode, but I forgot. So Yugioh is a very poorly designed card. He's a level 6. You can get him out too quickly. He has more attack power than basically all of the level 8, synchros, a lot of the big Exceed monsters, and his effect has no negative repercussions. He's just, you take their monster, it's yours. It goes into defense mode, so hopefully it has big enough defense to survive an attack from your opponent when, after you've taken the monster. But usually you take something big, and big monsters just tend to have high defense. A common scenario you would see when Goyo came out was your opponent would bring out Stardust Dragon, feel very accomplished, and think they were invincible, and then you would bring out your Goyo Guardian and take it. And that's very down-putting and kind of, that's kind of discouraging. After you worked to bring out your Stardust Dragon, you feel like, oh, I've turned the tide. And your opponent just does a simple, E-Telly into a Malicious, or 2 level 3, a Sangan, and a Psychic Commander, and make their 6-star. Or, a Stratos and a Krebins, just whatever. And it's just all this hard work has gone to waste because this big Goyo Guardian is sitting there and he's about to take your monster for free. Not only that, but he was a threat to Gores. Gores isn't big enough to withstand a Goyo Guardian attack, which is just ridiculous. And yeah, the token is 28 now, but if your opponent has the piece of removal or the launcher or whatever to get rid of that token, your Gores is just sitting there, helpless. And I feel like Goyo should never come off the ban list. There should never be a card like Goyo ever again. And if there is, there needs to be some kind of negative repercussion that the player takes when using its effect. Exceeds are a good example of that. There's that Vylon Exceed that you take your opponent's monster, but you have to kind of give up something for it. So that's a good example of kind of like a more balanced version of Goyo. And the last card is Ring. Ring of Destruction also just promotes OTKs. Ring of Destruction is so powerful that I don't ever see it ever coming off. They should just make a permaban list or a never re-released list like Magic has, because Ring is so powerful. It's too powerful. It's too powerful. Your opponent can have you down to 2,000 attack or life points, and your opponent could be down to 1,000 attack life points, and they could be about to win, and they bring out something just to clinch it or whatever, or they already have something on the board. You just normal summon a Sangan during your turn, and your opponent just knows that they lost, because why would a Sangan be a threat unless you had a Ring? Or if your opponent got first turn, got out a fat field, attacked you on their first turn, put you down to 2,500 or maybe 3,000, but they also have a really big monster on the board and Ring of Destruction, the game's already over. It's just a really bad card. It's too powerful. It's too powerful, and I don't think it should ever come off the list. But yeah, so those are my 3 cards that I think should never come off the list: Magician of Faith, Cyberstein, Goyo Guardian, and Ring. But Goyo Guardian and Ring are tied for the 3rd spot. Now let me know what you guys think about my list and what you guys think should never come off the list.